All right, I'm Shannon Kliski. I'm one of the product managers on ArcGIS Enterprise, and with me today,
I'm Kelly Gerrow-Wilcox. I'm also a product manager, but with the ArcGIS Online team.
So today we're going to be talking about a crash course in Web GIS. So basically what this means is that some of those entry-level introduction concepts that you see in the intro sessions, we're going to be skipping over that and just getting right down to that essential information that you need to know. Keep in mind, if you missed those intro sessions, they are still recorded, and you'll get the slides and in the conference proceedings after the conference is over, and the videos will be available on YouTube and E380. So with that, let's get started. When we talk about Web GIS, what do we mean? Do we mean just a REST endpoint or a service? No. We mean this end-to-end cohesive experience. And what I mean by that is if you think about a REST endpoint, like visualize it in your mind, what that looks like. How many people could you give that to and have them form any sort of logical conclusion from? Be able to answer any sort of question? I would be impressed if you could find anyone that could be like, yes, I can answer my problems and do my job with this. Really what you need is some sort of viewer or something to be able to consume that so people can look at it and be able to figure out what the information actually is. But with Web GIS, through the portal experience that you get with Enterprise or online, people can have the data right there. They log in, they can start to see it, they can answer questions, they can bring their own data to the data that you've already provided. They can create maps, they can create apps. So when we talk about Web GIS, what we're really talking about is that full experience, not just the REST service. Though of course, especially if you're using ArcGIS Enterprise, you can still get at those services. So don't think that they've gone anywhere. So let's jump into some of the essential knowledge for ArcGIS Enterprise. Before you get started, realize that someone in your organization, maybe it's you, will need to install and configure the ArcGIS Enterprise software components. That standard configuration of ArcGIS Enterprise is what we call a base ArcGIS Enterprise deployment. It takes all the software components and configures them together. This is where we recommend people start with the software, but it's not where it has to end. You can, of course, federate additional servers. We have a variety of server roles. We have actually 5. And you can license servers to have a specific function or just have additional GIS servers to support workload separation. When all of these are federated together in an ArcGIS Enterprise deployment, it allows you to be able to control everything from your portal as a kind of command center, and you still have access to all your server managers to be able to get in and do things like turn services on and off, tune services, look at error logs, any of that sort of thing. Within ArcGIS Enterprise, it's very important to understand the ArcGIS data store, and it's there to store hosted data. So what is hosted data? Well, it's simply that data that you copy to ArcGIS Enterprise. And it's also the output of an analysis tool that you run from within the Enterprise portal. So how do you create this hosted data? Well, one place could be ArcGIS Pro. When you click that copy all data button, it's going to create hosted data for you, hosted layers. Now, even if you have data that's in a database that's registered with your server, and you choose the copy all data button, it will create a copy of that data, even if it exists in a registered database. So just keep that in mind with your copy all data option. The other place, like I mentioned, is in the ArcGIS Enterprise portal. Whenever you run any analysis tool that you can access through the analysis panel, it is creating hosted content. This is also true when you are running tools from a Jupyter notebook through the ArcGIS API for Python. It's creating hosted content. Your other option with ArcGIS Enterprise is that you can reference registered data. This is where you have your own data. Maybe it's an enterprise geodatabase, maybe it's a cloud store, maybe it's a big data file share. Whatever it is, you want to have the data stay where it's at, and you want to be able to just simply reference that from your enterprise deployment. So in Pro, you would do this by simply referencing the registered data, and they actually have a new pane within Pro where you can manage the registered data stores. Here you can add a data store, edit a data store, similar to an ArcMap workflow that you may have been familiar with in the past, but now there's a pane in Pro that you can do it. Also, you can choose to set up a data store when the analyzer runs. So if you are analyzing your service to be published and it says, hey, this data is not registered, you have the option right then and there to go ahead and register that data if you would like. Of course, I'm an ArcGIS Enterprise Product Manager, so my favorite way to register data is through ArcGIS Server Manager. Simply go to your site and under the Data Store section, choose the drop-down to select what kind of data store you want to register, and then you can go from there. Remember, with ArcGIS Enterprise, beginning at 10.6, you need the ArcGIS data store to be set up as that managed database for your hosting server. So if you're familiar with ArcGIS Enterprise before this, then you know that you could have been using an enterprise geodatabase. Going forward from 10.6, it really does need to be the ArcGIS data store. And we have a white paper that we'll be releasing later this year that will go into more about the ArcGIS data store, registered databases, how these all work together. So be looking for that in the next couple of months. And a few last points in the essential knowledge of ArcGIS Enterprise. I mentioned this before, but as an administrator, think of your enterprise portal as your main command center, where you're going to do things like set security, share content, add and manage users, create groups. All of that stuff you're doing from the enterprise portal. You're not doing it from the server itself anymore. Remember that you can deploy ArcGIS Enterprise on premises or in the cloud. It's a misconception a lot of people have where they think enterprise only can be run on physical or virtual machines within your organization, but it's not true. You can deploy in the cloud. In fact, we have deployment automation tools for AWS and Azure as a machine image and tooling that will allow you to easily deploy on those clouds. But if you're working with a local cloud provider or any other cloud, you can use Chef or even PowerShell DSC, which is new to ArcGIS Enterprise, to automate those deployments as well. Lastly, this is a recent announcement, but it's very important that you've all heard. Those level 1 members for ArcGIS Enterprise, the viewers, are now included with ArcGIS Enterprise Standard and Advanced at no additional cost. This means that if you want people to have viewer-level access to your content and services, you can absolutely give them access. Simply go to My Esri, create an authorization file for as many users as you want. I've double-checked. There's apparently no limit to the number you can ask. I think eventually the cell size will max out, but that's the only limit. Keep in mind, though, that whenever you are adding these viewers, if your original architecture was intended to support, say, 500 users, and you go and add 100,000 viewers, well, your system may suffer if all of those viewers, or even a great number of them, tried to log on at one time. So keep that in mind and consider scaling if you do plan on adding a lot of viewers to your ArcGIS Enterprise deployment. So earlier in the summit, we had an introduction to building your first ArcGIS Enterprise deployment. So like I said, this will cover all of that introductory information to ArcGIS Enterprise. Whenever you're looking for the video on E380 or YouTube, the presenters were Jonathan Quinn and Thomas Edgehill, so that should help you find it.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Web GIS in the cloud and ArcGIS Online. Shannon just went through quite a few architectural components of ArcGIS Enterprise. And I'm going to go through a few things that our customers are actually saying about using Web GIS in the cloud. So one of the things that we hear most often about benefits of the cloud is scalability. So ArcGIS Online is created to auto-scale to any demand that it receives. So the cost stays the same, but we'll add machines and we'll add power as needed if maps go viral. With ArcGIS Enterprise on a cloud deployment, the same scalability can happen if that's how you've got it configured and you've managed the scalability. You pay for what you use and leverage it without permanent cost increases. So with ArcGIS Online, we've got a great credit structure where you only pay for the items you use, the data you store, and you don't pay for anything that you're not using. Same concept with ArcGIS Enterprise in the cloud. You're paying for the machines that you're using when you're using them. If you need to scale up, you pay then. When you don't need to use the extra infrastructure, you don't have to pay for that when you're not using it. Location independence. So with ArcGIS Online and other cloud infrastructures, it's available on the internet all the time. So you don't need to worry about whether it's in an internal network or you need a VPN. It's really just available, usually by a web browser, to access the software and the services. And then security and reliability. So with cloud software, there are actually fewer reported security incidents, and it's generally more available and reliable. We have very few very little downtime with ArcGIS Online, and additionally with cloud providers. Usually when something does go down, everyone hears about it because Netflix isn't working and people are panicking because there's no TV. But generally there's a lot fewer instances of security problems with cloud software. As we've got kind of one security team, and we've got, I think, about 10 people specifically working on the security of ArcGIS Online. They're all working and dealing with any security concerns, any reports on a daily basis, and providing patches when needed. And then speed and responsiveness in creating information products. With ArcGIS Online, the software's already installed. All you need to do is activate an organization. So this is really, really quick to get up and running, create your data, create your maps, and share it with the public. So ArcGIS Online specifically, it's got a lot of similar components to ArcGIS Enterprise, but it's a software as a service. It's already installed. Esri manages the cloud on our own cloud. There we go. It's managed through Esri's cloud. It auto-scales to meet needs when apps are under heavy load. So this happened a lot this year with the hurricanes and the wildfires that we experienced in the US. There was a lot of organizations that needed to provide maps and data really, really quickly. So hey, where are evacuation zones? Where can I find shelters? What's the timing of this hurricane? That type of spatial information was really easy to put together and then share with the public. With some of the providers that started with their own infrastructure, very quickly did the amount of traffic overwhelm their own servers, and they had to move their data to the cloud so that we could scale for them. So it's one of those nice things that if you're going to get a huge load, ArcGIS Online will automatically scale to meet that need.
And it's not just disasters. What about Pokemon Go? That was a fun one. That we scaled, do you remember how many views we had and how many calls we scaled to?
Yeah, we have a lot of base maps that are viewed. So Pokemon Go is a big one. Actually, it's not Pokemon Go, it's...
PokeView. Was that it?
Oh, it's the PokeHunter. PokeVision? Yeah, there's a lot of Poke. If you ask Jack, he has talked about the Pokemon a few times, so it's a good one to get him to start talking about. But it was one of those cheats. If you didn't really want to go on your phone and find the Pokemon, it would tell you where the rare ones were, so you'd already know without having to be in the general area. So that got really popular really quickly last year. We've got a few other base maps like that that are used kind of every day.
Skip that.
All right, so yeah, it can easily be activated and up and running in minutes. New functionality and upgrades are automatically available when updates occur. So this is something where you wake up in the morning and it's like Christmas. You just have a bunch of new functionality that you can use in ArcGIS Online. You don't have to consider how it's going to upgrade. Everything is backwards compatible, and then you just get the new functionality. So I think it's planned right now for April 13th. We'll have some new functionality like content categories available when you wake up in the morning. And then it integrates with enterprise environments. So you can set ArcGIS Online up to use some of the systems that you already have. So it works well with ArcGIS Enterprise services. You can consume those in ArcGIS Online. It also has the ability to integrate your login system. So let's say you have enterprise logins, ADFS, Shibboleth that you use to manage your logins already. You can connect that to ArcGIS Online so your users don't have to have another username and password. All right, and then with distributed collaboration, I'll talk a little bit more about this. There's the ability to coordinate content from your ArcGIS Enterprise to ArcGIS Online. So we have this new capability that actually copies content from one architecture to the other to keep that data in sync. So you only have to manage it in one location, but can still view it and view up-to-date content in that location. And there's access to the ArcGIS Online ecosystem. So what's the ArcGIS Online ecosystem? It sounds really exciting, and it is. We've got a ton of content in ArcGIS Online. So this is Living Atlas content, subscriber content, marketplace content, all of your content. Anything that's shared with everyone is available to the users of ArcGIS Online. You can access it through the Living Atlas, sometimes through open data, but ArcGIS Online is the main portal to being able to search for all of that content that's out there. All right, so with this, those are kind of some of the main things that you get with ArcGIS Online. There's a lot of shared concepts with Web GIS between ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise, because underneath the covers, it's all coming from the same code base. So you may notice that a lot of things are very similar, except for the server roles, and we'll go through this in a little bit. But these are some of the combined components that really make the Web GIS that you can use in both ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise. So we've got mapping and visualization, and I'm sure that this is mentioned in every presentation that we have.
If you don't know, Esri makes maps.
We make maps.
We help you make maps.
Visualize data. But that's some of the core components in ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprises. You can create those maps. You can create the data. You can visualize the data. We've got smart mapping. We've got JavaScript APIs. We've got other APIs that you can use to create those maps and visualize them so that people can get a deeper look at your data. We've got administration and security. And this is, I think, one of the more boring topics sometimes, but it's one of my favorites because it's about rules, and I like rules. But you really need to have a good set of rules, administration, and security within an organization if you're going to manage a lot of users and content. So we've built a lot of tools and administration to try and make this easier and give the granularity that you need in your Web GIS. So these are things like privileges to give people access to certain services like geocoding or data enrichment, the ability to be able to share with everyone or only share with an organization, the ability to be able to see content in the organization or not, and then some security and sharing, which I'll go into a little bit further in a minute. We've got data management. So these are all the different layers that you can have and content in ArcGIS Online. So we've got hosted feature services. We've got tiled services in ArcGIS Enterprise. There's also dynamic map services. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different data that you can manage and use to visualize your data with or interact with in different web applications. We've also got analysis tools where you can create data. So either through analysis, we've got join tools, said data enrichment already, but creating buffers, all of that spatial information can be created through some of these analysis tools and data management.
And a little I'll touch on kind of where ArcGIS Enterprise differs from online in the category of analytics. So that'll be in a little bit.
So we do have analytics. Some of those analysis tools, we've got insights for ArcGIS in both ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online, and you can perform and display analysis. Content, been talking about some content. So you've got a lot of content within your organization, so that can be really great if you're creating, let's say, a data atlas or content that's really specific to just your organization. Or if you're looking to find content that, let's say, USGS is sharing with everyone, NOAA. We've got some really great data providers out there, and you can access and use their data in your information products. We've got a lot of hosted interactive web applications in ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise. So those are things like the configurable apps, story maps, web app builder. They've got tools and interactive functionality that you can build with your data sets to share that information in an easy to understand way with your users. And then sharing and collaboration. And this is something that's really, really important and getting more important as we've got more people on the internet and in the ArcGIS Online ecosystem. As we've got some of the power of the Web GIS is the ability to share your content, not just within your organization, but outside of your organization, with other people, with specific groups. So all of this sharing, collaboration, content, it really all comes down to identity. And identity is kind of the core part of a Web GIS for the basis of access, security, and content ownership. So this really is your username and password to ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. With your identity, your username and password, you're given a role that has specific privileges. You can have a member level, so a level 1 or a level 2 member, which gives you access to some specific privileges or roles. And you can also have access to credits. And we've got a little star here because credits are a component of ArcGIS Online to use some of our services, our hosted services, as you need them. But they're also a component that you can use in ArcGIS Enterprise if you want to take advantage of some of the ArcGIS Online services.
Right, so within ArcGIS Enterprise, you're probably very aware of the utility tab. If you go into there, you can configure those utility services from ArcGIS Online, and then you can be able to use those within your organization. Additionally, Living Atlas, that's now available with ArcGIS Enterprise and has been since 10.5, includes some premium content. So whenever you're embedding credentials in there, you'll be seeing ArcGIS Online credits being used. But keep in mind, we don't do any credit tracking within the ArcGIS Enterprise space. All of that happens in online. This means that whatever credential you embed is the one that you will be looking at credit budgeting for. We've definitely heard the feedback that people would like finer grained granularity on that, but it's just something that right now we're not providing that. And on the member roles, I wanted to point out that whenever we add new privileges, which we occasionally do as we add new functionality, typically we will have that functionality as off. So you would have to go in and add the new privilege, whatever it is, as we add it. There's a few cases where it's not like that. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. Okay.
In the last release, with the update member capability, we added the ability to reset passwords. It made sense that if you're updating a user, that you would also be able to reset their passwords and have the reset password option come up. So that's kind of one of the off cases where we added that in during a release, but most of the time they're additional roles or privileges. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about the sharing model, and that's also integrated in with our identity. So how do we determine who can access what? It's really with their username and password. So if you can use your imagination right now and get rid of the groups column because I'm missing a slide. The first kind of step of the sharing model is really just private content. So that's where you create content, you own it, it's in your profile, and you can view your content. So that's what you usually do for developing new content, testing things out. A lot of the times that's where you might have test in the name or test in the tags or tags in the tags. But this is really where you kind of experiment around and see what content you've got. And generally you just share it with yourself. So the owner of the content and then any administrators or people with the ability to view other members' content as an administrative privilege can view that content. The next step really is groups. So this is our shared capability of sharing with specific users or collaborating with authenticated users. If you share content with a group and someone else is a member of that group, they'll be able to see that content. You still own it, but they'll be able to use it and interact with it depending on their privileges and the privileges that are set on the piece of content. So for example, if you have a feature layer view and you've made it editable and you've shared that editable view with a group, then all the members of that group will be able to edit the content. The next level is sharing with the organization. So this is where you check the box that says share with the organization. You might share with a group too, but this means anyone in the organization is going to be able to search for the content and find the content. The other neat thing with the new redesign of the items page is there's a tab that says my organization's content in the content page. That's a really great way to create a data catalog in your organization that's really easy to find for your users because it's automatically there. They just have to go to my organization's content, and that's the content that everyone has already curated for access to by the organization. The next step is sharing with everyone. So in ArcGIS Online, this means sharing with the internet, with the ArcGIS Online ecosystem. Any content that's shared with everyone is indexed in a Google search, it's searchable in ArcGIS Online, and it's there for everyone. With ArcGIS Enterprise, when you share it for everyone, it allows anonymous access to the content. So you don't necessarily need to be a signed-in user in order to see this content.
Right, but it is restricted down to the network that you have ArcGIS Enterprise deployed on. So it's not necessarily everyone in the whole wide world, unless everyone in the whole wide world with an internet access could find your enterprise deployment. So keep that in mind.
And then we have this new model, which is sharing between infrastructure or sharing with specific organizations. So this is where you find another organization and you determine that they're an organization that you want to trust and that you can share specific content with them and have someone in their organization managing who's a member of the groups who can access content.
Okay, so now you know some essential knowledge for ArcGIS Enterprise. And Kelly covered some essential knowledge for ArcGIS Online. And the last few slides, we've been talking about shared concepts between the two of them, ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. But we recognize that a lot of organizations are tasking people with choosing just one. And so if you do have to choose just one, how do you know which option you should choose? So deciding between ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online really comes down to a few different things. Within ArcGIS Enterprise, one of the key driving factors we see people choosing Enterprise for is that they need to manage the infrastructure themselves. Now, the reason why they need to do this may be that they have some federal regulation or an internal rule within their organization. Maybe they're dealing with sensitive information, but for whatever the case is, they have to manage that infrastructure on their own. So for that very reason, ArcGIS Online would not be an option. Another reason is that they need to have an internal geospatial system of record. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that internal to the organization, they need to be able to keep all of those databases right there so that they can continue to do database audits or be able to pull reports from them. But for whatever reason, the organization has decided that doing these things from ArcGIS Online will not work. These databases, maybe it's Oracle, SQL, Postgres, whatever, is something that lives within the organization, and that is where the data must stay. So this could be the case of if you're an organization that heavily uses enterprise geodatabases. The next reason would be your workflows require specific analysis. So earlier when Kelly mentioned analytics, I said I would go into some of the differences between enterprise and online. All of the standard analysis tools that you see are definitely shared between the two. In fact, if you open that standard analysis palette in Pro, regardless of if enterprise or online is set as your active portal, those standard analysis tools will be the same. However, if you have ArcGIS Enterprise, you have the ability to add server licensing roles. Now, the two big ones here that we're talking about are ArcGIS GeoAnalytics Server and ArcGIS Image Server, because Image Server is the one that gives you raster analytics. These capabilities are only available with ArcGIS Enterprise. They are not available with ArcGIS Online. So if you're looking at doing some heavy lifting with big data, or if you're needing to distribute your imagery analyses and workflows, then these are cases where you'll want to have ArcGIS Enterprise. You'll need to, in fact, if you want to take advantage of these tools. That doesn't mean that you can't move over results to online later on, but if you want to actually run the analysis, you're going to need Enterprise, and not just a single server, but a full base deployment. So like I mentioned, image and geoanalytics. Another case is GeoEvent Server. This isn't as tightly integrated with the portal and with Pro as raster analytics and geoanalytics is, but it is still another compelling use case that if you are doing a lot in the real-time or IoT space, that you may need ArcGIS Enterprise. Then another really compelling reason is the ability to customize your Web GIS functionality. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not meaning the shared theme or what the look and feel of your portal is, because between enterprise and online, they're pretty consistent on those. What I'm talking about is the ability to add things like custom widgets. The web app builder that's included with ArcGIS Enterprise allows you to add custom geoprocessing widgets right then and there. Out of the box, you don't need the developer edition. The reason for this is that you're running the infrastructure, so you can decide if you trust that code. Within ArcGIS Online, that multi-tenant nature of ArcGIS Online does not allow us to do that. It would be a security risk. How do we know someone's not writing delete */*, and then all of a sudden everyone's having some downtime? We're not going to allow that. Web Tools is a new functionality within ArcGIS Pro. This is the way you can publish and share a geoprocessing service. Web tools are very powerful because in addition to being able to plug them into a geoprocessing widget within Web App Builder, you can also find them directly from the map viewer in your portal. So this means users can be able to search the analysis tools and be able to actually find this and run it in the map viewer, and then have all of the output, of course, integrate within their content. SOEs and SOIs are a little more advanced. So these are things that you're doing on the actual servers. If you need to customize what's happening as things are coming in or going out, maybe it's a visualization or rendering type workflow, whatever it is that you may be doing, this is again a level of customization that's only available within ArcGIS Enterprise because you are managing the infrastructure. You get to decide what customization best fits your deployment. Within ArcGIS Online, you probably wouldn't be pleased if some other organization went and started customizing things on your behalf. And finally, if you need to work in a completely disconnected environment, so for security reasons or just you are at a place where there's no open internet, this would be a case where you could use ArcGIS Enterprise. ArcGIS Online definitely requires an internet connection. So if you need to be without connectivity to the open internet, ArcGIS Enterprise would be your option for Web GIS implementation. So now I'll turn it over to Kelly to go over some of the things that will draw you to online.
All right. So you'll notice that a lot of these are the opposite or not included on the enterprise side. So one, you don't want to or don't have the resources to manage your own infrastructure. So if you don't want to manage the installation, manage the infrastructure, ArcGIS Online is a great option. If you want infrastructure that's massively scalable without your intervention. So if you want ArcGIS Online to manage that infrastructure, to manage the scalability, that's another really great choice. And you can connect to the internet. So that's another requirement, is you need to be able to connect to the internet, you need to be able to sign in. You can create apps and content that you can take offline for periods of a time, but overall you need that internet connectivity. And I think that's the last one. So if you notice here, there's a lot of things that aren't there in ArcGIS Online, which came out as kind of the things that would push you over to the enterprise side. So it's important to be familiar with those things that you can do in enterprise that aren't available in ArcGIS Online.
But don't let the list of the bullets fool you. I mean, the ability to, I don't think I've ever met someone that just really got a kick out of managing infrastructure. No. I don't know if that person, they might be here, but I haven't met them. So that's a really strong driving reason that you may want to use online. That scalability, I don't know anyone who just really enjoys sitting and scaling infrastructure as things go up and down. People would love for that to just be handled on their behalf, and that's what online can provide you. Now, there are some things that you'll notice aren't here at all. Nowhere on here do you see credits. Credits are not a reason that you should be driving your decision one way or another. This is something that we used to hear a lot in years past, and we're hearing less and less of, so that's great. But don't think that, oh, well, I don't want to use credits, so I'm going to go enterprise. Yes, you won't use credits in enterprise unless you configure utility service and premium content from the Living Atlas, but you are paying for infrastructure, paying to people to run the infrastructure. You're maintaining it, you're upgrading it. So it's not just, well, there's no cost here. Likewise to that is the level 1 viewers that are now included with ArcGIS Enterprise. Whenever this announcement was made, we heard some people say, oh, great, I should use ArcGIS Enterprise because those viewers are still for cost and online. This would be much more economical. Well, again, consider you're running infrastructure, you're maintaining all of the infrastructure for your organization and doing all of that work yourself. So yes, you may not be paying for viewers, but you're paying in time, experience, and managing the software yourself. And the last thing you don't see on here is specific features. Very often we get asked, is there any sort of document or matrix or something that tells me feature by feature what's in online versus what's in enterprise? And we've kicked around the idea a few times. In fact, one day I even made a draft of what this could possibly look like. But at the end of the day, we decided, no, this document isn't going to be something that's feasible to maintain. And the reason why is, as Kelly mentioned at the beginning, we have a single code base that, because enterprise releases 2 times a year and online releases 4 times a year, periodically we branch off from the code base so that way we can actually release things to you. So functionality is always very close parity, except for the things that we absolutely can't offer in one versus the other. So if you're looking at a specific feature or function and you say, this is the thing that my organization needs, but it's not available in what my best fit Web GIS implementation would be, reach out to Esri. Let us know. Give us that feedback. You can go to the IDEAS site. You can go to GeoNet. You can talk to your account managers. Give us that feedback because for all you know, it may be coming in the next release. So keep that in mind. Don't just let one feature hang you up on which way you choose. But that said, if both columns seemed pretty appealing, you really like that massive scalability online, but you acknowledge there are some needs that you have that keep you in the enterprise column, you absolutely can choose both. And the key advantage to this is that you get the strength of both. You get the massive scalability, the ability for online to be this really resilient system that you can have for your public users. A lot of organizations find it's easier to onboard members to online because they're not needing to add folks to their organization's Active Directory. Of course, if you're using the new SAML options, then maybe that doesn't apply. But that is something that we've heard from users. But so the scalability for external users, and then for keeping enterprise, you have the security for all of your internal systems and data. So now, great, we have everything we need. Except there is a consideration for you to keep in mind. While ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online share the concept of identity, they do not share the actual identities themselves. So this means that if you have a user that needs access to both Enterprise and Online, they will need two separate credentials, one identity for Online, one identity for Enterprise. Now, this is where we encourage you to think about what these users are doing and what they need to do. Remember, in Enterprise, viewers are no cost. So if they really aren't going to need to be editing, give them one of those viewers. It's like a free giveaway for them. But do keep in mind that that is something you'll need to plan for and consider. There's no going single user to rule them all. We have not created that.
All right, and I'm going to talk a little bit about distributed collaboration, which really kind of marries the two systems together and allows you to easily manage the data in one system and still have it accessible in the other system. So as you see, I've got these two boxes. One of them is ArcGIS Enterprise, one of them is ArcGIS Online. You can see the differences in the icons and also the words that I wrote down. But if you see, we've got Sam, he's a GIS analyst at Genesee City, and he's managing a parcel layer that's in his enterprise geodatabase on his enterprise portal. He really wants this data to be accessible to the citizens of Genesee City via the web, so using ArcGIS Online, but also wants to make sure that he's managing it in his internal database system so other internal users can access that database. So what he's going to do is set up collaboration so that it sends a copy of that data over to the ArcGIS Online organization and displays in this parcel viewer for his citizens. He sets it up so that it synchronizes over every night so that they're seeing up-to-date data. It's data directly from his database, but it's then hosted in ArcGIS Online. So if he's got a lot of users, some people really want to look at that parcel data. We've got 1 million people looking at it at 1 second. It's there, it's scalable, it's ready for them. But he doesn't have to worry about having a really vast system in which he's managing just his data.
All right, and the last area that I want to touch on is automating your Web GIS workflows. So in the plenary, you saw Atma and Rohit demonstrate the ArcGIS API for Python. The ArcGIS API for Python could easily fall in that shared category of the concepts between the two, because it does equally apply to ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. So you can run the API in a Jupyter notebook, which is what you saw in the plenary, or you can use a raw Python script if you're not a fan of Jupyter. You can still run the API there. The main uses, and really the only uses we see people using the ArcGIS API for Python, is one of two categories: administrative automation or analytical scripts. So with the administrative, this is the ability for you to script repetitive analytical, that should be administrative and not analytical. Sorry, administrative, pretend that says administrative, tasks that are tedious to do manually. So this could be things like creating groups, moving content, any of those things where to do it by hand would just feel like it takes forever. On the analytical side, we have the ability to rerun a script and automate the workflow. If you're using a notebook, then that can also serve as a way to document everything that you've done as part of a full analysis project. The Python API allows you to use external libraries. So for a lot of parts, we see this more on the analytical side, but if you can think of a way that it applies to the administrative side, by all means, go for it. So an example of this would be you have people collecting information maybe from Collector, and this data has now rolled back into your organization, and lo and behold, people have left in trailing white space, and you want to get rid of that. Well, Pandas makes it extremely easy for you to do that, and so using Pandas as part of the ArcGIS API for Python, you can then trim off that white space. You could even fix the casing if maybe somebody was all caps because they were yelling in the field. Those field guys really love all caps, in case you didn't know. And lastly, it allows you to extend your GIS work into data science space. So you saw Rohit in the plenary demonstrate a deep learning model using the ArcGIS API for Python. Not everyone is there yet. So if you're not doing deep learning on imagery, don't feel like you're behind the ball. Rohit's just ahead of the game. The Road Ahead session was this morning, so this last bullet here is no longer a sneak peek, but more of a recap. That on the road ahead for ArcGIS Enterprise and even for ArcGIS Online, we're looking at integrating a scripting environment into your Web GIS. This would centralize that place for you to have access to these notebooks so that you could run them, you could clone them, you could do a great number of tasks. Maybe even one day create a complete geoprocessing service straight there from your Web GIS rather than calling your desktop. We'll see what actually happens as we move forward. Okay, so how many of you consider yourself Python experts? No one. How many of you are kind of interested? Oh, wait, I got one hand over there. He's like, oh no, he was just stretching. He was just like, oh, bad time to stretch. How many of you feel like you've seen this, it seems interesting, but you don't really know exactly where you should be starting or how to really make this go? All right. You dabble. Yeah, I'm a Python dabbler. That is myself as well. So I'm going to show you a little different demo of the Python API from the perspective of one of us dabblers. So I'm going to go to the developers site, developers.arcgis.com, and here you can quickly access the ArcGIS API for Python. Oh, you need to see that screen. No, nope, wrong one.
That's printing.
I'm going to print the screen out and I'll give you all a handout. There we go. Okay, so now you can see I'm on the developer site. I've just clicked on ArcGIS API for Python. On this page, it gives you sample notebooks. So let's take an org administration workflow, moving content to new users. You can click on downloading the samples. It jumps you down the page, and you can download as an archive or clone from the GitHub repository. Either way, you're basically getting a zip file, so just choose whatever floats your boat. So I've already downloaded the zip file. It's over here in my downloads. I have the ArcGIS API for Python. Here's what it looks like when it gives it to you. If you go to samples, because that's what we're looking at, org administration, this matches very closely what we saw on the actual page. And now here you can see all of these scripts. If I were to open, If I were to open this, it would give me the whole script, but I actually already have it open and I don't want to break it. So here is my moving existing, well, we can show you. So if I wanted to upload a script here, I could go in to my downloads. Oh my gosh, we have icons. Why do we have giant icons? There we go. Browse to that folder. There it is. Find the sample that I'm interested in. So we were in org administrators, moving existing content. Great. You see it gives me the option to upload it. We'll cancel that. I'm going to cancel it because I already have it. But it opens the notebook. So here I have the notebook. Now all I did in these cells was go through and change the parts that needed to change. I left this text up here the same because I don't care. To run a cell in a Jupyter notebook, you just hit the shift button and hit enter. Or you can go and hit this play button. Notice that whenever I run the cell, it kind of has an asterisk while it's running, and then it'll go back to a number. So in this cell 2, I've changed the default portal from the sample notebook and just plugged in my own portal name. You guys can't access this, and clearly I do not use password123 as my password for everything. So don't get excited and go try to go hack into this. So then I provided my username and password. This was already there in the sample notebook. I just replaced the values with the values I need. Shift enter to run the cell. Great. And now I'm going to change these cells around. Let's look at my portal real quick. So here I'm logged in as a user. His profile is called Old Dog, and he has a City of Austin dog parks map. And this, probably the most adorable layer from the Living Atlas, the children's map of Living Atlas. I don't know if you've seen this, but I really want more people to use it as a base map. It's just awesome. Okay, so this is what he has in his content. So let's suppose that this old dog is now retiring and going to no longer be a part of the organization. We want to be able to move the content from his profile to a newer profile so that we can ultimately reuse his user for somebody else. So all I'm doing is providing the name of his account and the account of the one that I want to move the content to. So that cell is run. So now we want to make sure that we have the right user. So when I shift enter on this, it's going to go look at my portal, And there it goes. It pulls up his profile. So now I'm just confirming that this is the person whose stuff I want to move away from. All right. There was a couple other cells in the sample notebook that I deleted. These were creating a new user right here in the notebook, and I already have the account that I wanted to add to. So I deleted those cells, and now all that I have to do is shift enter on this cell. Okay, you can see that it's back to a number, so we're fine. Let's go back to our portal, do a refresh, and you can see that Charlie has no more content anymore. That old dog profile has no content. So let's log into the user that we sent that content to. So that profile is called new trick. Get what I did there? Old dog, new trick. We're real clever at Esri. All right, so now I'm logged in as new trick here, and I go to the content, and there it is. Dog parks, city things, and maybe I messed, and if I said, oh no, I messed up, I want to do it again, all I have to do is just switch out these cells. You can picture this as maybe I'm changing even other users. Oops, type right that. Rerun the cells. We can even rerun this one if we want to make sure that it's going to new trick, and rerun that last cell. And if we come back to new trick and refresh, we see the content's now gone. If I were to log into old dog, there it would be again. And that's how easy it is. I can save that profile, that Jupyter notebook, and then I could be able to use that anytime. And with 2 items, it might not be impressive, but picture those users where you have 200 items. You don't want to be manually doing that. So that's some of the power of the Python API, and you can see you didn't have to be an expert to do that. You just kind of looked at it and you saw the things. You know what your portal URLs look like. You know what passwords and usernames look like. And then you just shift enter, start running it, and you're off to the races. Okay, so let's jump back into our PowerPoint. Oh, nope, display that. All right. So Kelly and I would like you to please take our survey. We know that you've stuck around to Friday. You're just eager to give us that information, but it really does help us. We love to get the feedback. It lets us know kind of what you'd like to see next year, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you need more of, what you need less of. So this is in the events app. Just take the survey and we would really appreciate it. And with that, we have a few minutes for some questions. Yes?
Yeah, this may be really basic, but what is an enterprise geodatabase? That's different from a file geodatabase?
Yeah, so an enterprise geodatabase is a database that you are deploying on an existing RDBMS. So that's a relational database management system. So if your organization has, say, Oracle or SQL going on, you can deploy the enterprise geodatabase on top of that. And so what that'll allow is it'll allow you, one, your DBAs within your organization to perform the same sort of auditing or management and maintenance that they do with any other database. You can have more simultaneous access. You can have versioning. You can support larger amounts of data than a file geodatabase. So those are all things that you could have. I believe in the Pro doc is where we actually break that down. We're working on getting that over to the enterprise doc. So maybe 10.6.1, you'll see that breakdown in the enterprise doc. Might be a little later, depending on that. But that's it. It's just a different type of database.
So on that topic, I don't have DBA, so everything we do is in a folder.
Mm-hmm.
So with collaboration, not so much collaboration, the sharing to the online world, is that still viable in that structure?
Absolutely. So the main thing, and I'll let Kelly talk to the prerequisites for distributed collaboration. Kelly is actually running the beta between enterprise and online distributed collaboration today. So if you wanted to try it out, Kelly is who you should talk to. But I'll turn that over to Kelly.
Yeah, so you can use an enterprise geodatabase if you've got a federated server, or if you are using ArcGIS Enterprise and you're publishing to the data store, you can also collaborate between those two services. But in the end, you need to have a service in your enterprise in order to replicate to ArcGIS Online.
So that's the part that I'm still not clear about with the data store. So if I'm keeping my data for my users' purposes in this folder structure, the data store has a copy of whatever they're doing, right? So what does the publishing?
So if you've registered your data, then ultimately it's not necessarily the data item that you're sharing, it's whatever layer. So whatever your layer is built on, if you built a layer from the hosted content that you copied to the data store, or if you built the layer from the reference data that's in your database, that's up to you. You can do both. Whichever one of those layers you put into that collaboration group is what's shared. And so if you choose as a copy, you need to make sure that it's sync enabled, and there's obviously different workflows for that. But sync enabled data can be copied over, and then we have a white list of the different types of files that we can copy because we don't do everything. For example, hosted feature layer views, those are things we don't copy at this point in time. But like a feature layer, that's fine. Any file-based data, so like if you had a PDF, that would just be brought over as a copy. But you can find that list. Is it in the enterprise doc? You can find a list of it. I don't know if it's in the online doc. I'm not as familiar, but I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's there.
What version are you going to need for that distributed collaboration?
Yeah, it's version 10.5.1 or 10.6 in ArcGIS Enterprise, and then you just need to be a member of the early adopters community in order to have it enabled on your ArcGIS Online organization.
And just to clarify that, 10.5.1 is if you're doing enterprise and online. If you just are doing 2 enterprise portals, you can start at 10.5. Now, at 10.6, we introduced the ability for you to copy data between enterprise portals. So you can't copy data between a 10.5 deployment and a 10.6. So whatever the lowest level is the one that's going to set the rules kind of there.
I'd suggest starting with 10.6.
We always suggest.
Yeah, we got some feedback from 10.5.1 and fixed a few things, so I would suggest starting with 10.6 if you want to start on the easier path. Yeah.
So we're implementing an ADFS for sign-on for other purposes in the enterprise. So I'm curious, this 2-entity or 2-identity structure that you're describing.
Yeah.
What can you elaborate on that better so I understand what it is I'm setting up in online versus the enterprise?
Yeah, so it's really where you're using your named users. So you can set up both ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online to use the same SAML provider. This would take up this would take up a username in each of the infrastructure, but you'd be using the same username and password. They'd just be different on the back-end systems and how we track them.
So it's important then for the administrator to be aware that identities are rather occurring in both places. One and one and not the other.
Right.
And may need to be some kind of true up.
Right, or the other question is, do you need them to be members in both? Because sometimes we have a lot of members in just the enterprise organization and they're using the internal data and they've got one user in ArcGIS Online to publish data publicly. And that's really what all they use ArcGIS Online for. And sometimes it's the opposite, where you've got quite a few users, or 5 or 6 users in ArcGIS Enterprise who publish data, and then it gets copied up to ArcGIS Online, and everyone else uses ArcGIS Online. So you don't necessarily need 2 users in each architecture, but you've got to decide kind of how your data is going to flow and how you're going to manage it.
And if I want to reset all those users, like mobile users that are in HEOL to ADFS or SAML, do I have to reinitiate those identities?
Yeah, so right now you have to reinitiate the identities. What Shannon just showed with her moving content script, really helpful if you're doing that, because basically you'll have to have those same 2 users in your in ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise at the same time in order for you to switch the data over. But yeah, you do have to totally change their content over. Yeah. Or put them in and remove them. Yeah. Any other questions?
Is there thoughts around having like one user authentication sort of database for both, across both, as part of that sort of collaboration? Because obviously having it two is some situations pain.
Yeah, I guess right now, if you look at the 2 infrastructures and architecture, they're 2 completely different systems for managing username and passwords. One you manage on your own, the other one we manage at Esri. So there's really no communication between them right now. That's why and we don't have a lot of use cases for really requiring a use of both of them and being able to do cross use. Usually having a username in one or the other works depending on how you set it up. But if you have use cases where you really need to have 2 users logging into both systems because they're accessing different content, let us know and we can definitely talk about it, but it's not something that's on the roadmap right now.
One thing to keep in mind is, so with distributed collaboration, you have 2 choices. You can copy the data or reference it. So anytime we can't copy something, we're just going to reference it. Any security set on reference data is still enforced. So if you shared it through distributed collaboration to online and they tried to access that secured content, it would challenge them for credentials. The credentials that it's challenging them for is not their online credentials, but obviously their enterprise one. So in those cases, it's not, distributed collaboration isn't a way out of the identity model. It's just keep that in mind. So those would be scenarios where you would need to for the secured content.
Yeah.
So if you have ArcGIS Enterprise, how do you share your maps to the public? You have to have ArcGIS Online also?
You can, or if you've got your infrastructure configured so that it can be accessed via the internet. So if you've got your own web server and you've exposed it, people can access that if you say it's been shared with everyone. So there's kind of those two options. It's just you'd be managing the infrastructure.
Right.
So
So
when you say shared with everyone for your enterprise, that's public.
Yeah, it's shared. It's basically shared anonymously. So if all of your infrastructure's within your network and no one can get through to your network, then it's really only shared with your network. Now, if it's enabled through a web server to be accessed via the internet, then yeah, it's shared with everyone. But it's not shared into the ArcGIS Online ecosystem because it's its own enterprise. So it's not something that's automatically indexed, and it's not automatically added into the ArcGIS Online system.
any last questions? All right.
Happy weekend.
Happy weekend.
Travel's back.
You did it. I don't know how many, if you might have other Dev Summit sessions, but Kelly and I, this is our last one. So we did it. We survived.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.